This issue was originally X-Men 131 from 1980, I believe. This is kind of like a re-release. Back in the early 90s, I guess they did a re-release. I haven't really read up on the classic X-Men per se, why they decided to re-release the stories. But I'm not complaining because we got updated covers and they're absolutely phenomenal. Like, I actually prefer this cover. But this is classic X-Men 137, and as I just said, originally X-Men 131. This is part 3 of the Dark Phoenix Saga. And at this point, we've already been introduced to Emma Frost and Kitty Pryde, and the Hellfire Club is after Kitty. And I just love this gritty cover where it just says, "Run for your life," and we see Kitty shadowed in the alleyway with the streetlights coming after her. But before we even dive into this epic classic story, let's talk about who made these stories. So the original Run for Your Life was Chris Claremont writing. John Byrne was the penciler. Terry Austin inks. Tom Orzanowski doing the lettering. Glynis Oliver was the colorist. Now, with these re-releases, what it really made them special is they would give you backup stories. Not all of them were grand, and I'm going to be honest with you right off the bat. This particular one called Was Not What Will Be is not my favorite. I've read it several times, and I just tend to find my mind wandering because it's literally just talk. But anyway, let's neither here nor there. Fabian Nicieza writing. Rick Leonardi penciler. Bob McLeod doing the inks. Joe Rosen doing the lettering. And Mike Rockwitz doing the colors. And this redo of the cover was Steve Lytle, I believe is how you pronounce his name. Beautiful piece. The time is very early Sunday morning. The place, a back alley in Chicago, just off the loop. Lots of times tonight, Kitty Pryde thought she'd given her pursuers the slip, but each time, they'd found her again. And just when she thinks that she's about to get plowed by the Hellfire Club, all of a sudden, that kid ain't moving. I think we got her. Hey, what in heaven's name is that? It's Phoenix, one of the X-Men. She dropped out of nowhere between us and the girl. Run her down. Run me down, gentlemen. Somehow, I don't think so. And when I look at the older work like this, I love when the letter would actually get in on the action to add just their little bits to give that eeriness about Jean to show that she is now otherworldly. So we get that very disjointed word balloons compared to Kitty and the Hellfire guys. It just adds, again, as I just said, another layer. And Kitty, beaten up, terrified. That woman just waved her arms, and that car stopped like it hit a brick wall. What am I going to do now? And she tries to flee because this is her first interaction with Kurt and scares the living daylights out of her. Now, while this was all happening, there was a lot going on when they were just building up to the Dark Phoenix Saga. So they went to Chicago to check out Kitty because they saw that Cerebro gave a blip on a powerful mutant in the area. And Emma Frost also got the same blip. So in that issue, right off the bat, we got the first appearances of Kitty Pryde, the Hellfire Club, Emma Frost, and then the following issue, because Cyclops and them split up because there was another mutant in New York. Then we are introduced to the first appearance of Dazzler, and they have an adventure in New York, and they all end up back in Chicago. And just think about that. Boom, 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 boom. History after history after history, all with the team of John Byrne and Chris Claremont. Absolutely freaking phenomenal. I trust you'll think twice about how many mutants in the future. Phoenix, are you all right? Never felt better, Cyclops. Wow, Cyclops said Phoenix telekinesis powers were impressive, but I never dreamed. Compared to this, my mutant ability to create fancy light shows is nothing. What have you done? I told you not to stop that car. I told you to stop that car, not just turn it into instant junk. You didn't feel the girl's stark terror, Scott, or the thoughts of the killer chasing her. I am a telepath. I did. These animals got no more than they deserve. And think about, not only did I talk about how I enjoy how they do the discorded or disjointed lettering for Jean to show that the Phoenix Force is struggling with who she is. Think about before Len Wein and Dave Cockrum revamped the X-Men. Let's go back to Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, and then Roy Thomas, who tried to kind of carry this torch afterwards. Jean was always, and even in the animated series, she was always kind of the big sister that cared for everyone, and she still is. But at this point in history, it is such a juxtaposition to what Jean Grey is as a person, to show that she is no longer the girl that we've known through up to this point over the centuries. And Scott is realizing something is wrong. And then, of course, all her power abilities, able to take her clothes and telekinetically make them, just like kind of like the symbiote, for example. She's able to take her uniform, make an outfit. And right here, we see this gentle moment because she says, I will go after the girl. And Kitty just lets go of all this fear and trauma that she's just been through. Such a harrowing contrast to what we just saw a moment ago. Keep that in mind. So they read her mind to find out her mind, as well as the Hellfire agents, to find out where Emma Frost is. And if you notice, the car that Jean smashed, right back together. And where is it? Hold on. Let me find the page. So this is Kitty saving the X-Men right here. Hold on. Come on. There's something I wanted to point out to you guys, and now, of course, I can't find it. Anyway, essentially what happens is the Hellfire Club members are knocked out, and Jean is just essentially probing all of their minds to make them talk to their allies so that they can enter. And with her Phoenix ability, she rebuilds the car. And there's a moment in here where Scott is even taken aback, and I cannot for the life of me find the page where he's just completely blown away, saying, I can't believe that she's essentially using them as puppets and was able to reconstruct this entire car. He's not sure how far Jean is at this point. And from here, the battle between Jean and Emma Frost, I wish we could have had more. She says, all they'll find when they reach this chamber is a mindless thing, human only in physical form. You, Storm. Now remember, we just saw the two sides of Jean at the beginning of this book. Is that so? Who? Phoenix. The one and only. You're Emma Frost, the Hellfire Club's White Queen. I understand you call yourself something of a telepath. Well, Your Majesty, let's see how good you really are. And that is such a classic John Byrne panel right there, where Jean's kind of looking down, and we see the shadows go up in her eyes and accentuates the yellowness, the phoenix fire within her. And then what's also very important about this particular book, it's silly because, people say, oh, the first appearance of this, the first appearance of that. Blah, blah, blah. This is the first time Kurt uses his teleportation punches. He says, or the first time he's actually tried, because he says, I'm right behind you, mein Herr. I've been aching to try this stunt again. By teleporting as fast as I can punch, I can deck all these men before the rest even hits the ground. And then it says last used in Classic 17. So I have no idea what that translates to in originality. But this isn't the first, but this is the one where he actually utilizes it quite well. And I love how the letter, again, getting in on the action, BAMF, with the boofs in between Byrne's artwork. It just adds another layer to the story. Now, right here, the only person that is able to witness Jean really rip loose right here is Storm. She is terrified. At first, both women seemed evenly matched, but as the battle progressed, it became evidence that Phoenix was merely taking the White Queen's measure. Now that she's learned her foe's strengths and weaknesses, Phoenix begins to attack in earnest. It's an attack which the helpless Storm can only watch in awe and fear. The Phoenix effects is so beautiful, yet so terrible, like Jean herself. I've seen her like this only once before, in the heart of the alien Imcron crystal, before she saved the universe from destruction. Her power is a song within her, a passion beyond human comprehension. She is more alive than she has ever been. As she smashes through the White Queen's psychic defenses with contemptuous ease. And yet she knows this is nothing compared to what she felt within the great Emkron crystal. Bird, energy construct is training my strength, my very life force. Only one chance must recall all remaining power in the telepathic cybolt. The White Queen strikes with devastating effects. And so at this point, we don't know if Emma Frost is alive. And I like that that Claremont leaves it open-ended, because we don't know what's going to happen. Because at this point, all they want to care about is getting Kitty home. Of course, Dazzler at this point turns down the X-Men. She goes, I appreciate the offer, Professor, but world saving ain't my style. I prefer the excitement I get on stage, singing my heart out to an audience that really digs me. See ya, folks. Keep in touch. And that's kind of the end of Allison Blair at this point. But the Pryde family. Where were you? We were so worried. Where have you been? Good morning, Mr. Pryde. Shove it, mister. What have you been doing with my daughter? She goes off with your students and disappears. The malt shop was burned to the ground. We thought she'd been killed till the police identified the bodies they found. And just Pryde's losing it, as they should. And Xavier's trying to keep his calm because he knows that the parents are really worked up. Again, Jean. Enough's enough. I don't know what your game is, mister, but... There's a pause. It's good to see you again, sir. My wife and I were very impressed by your presentation yesterday. In fact, we've been discussing you and your school for gifted youngsters quite a lot since you left. That's nice to hear, Mr. Pryde. Call me Carmen. Suddenly, he's all sweetness and light, and the professor seems surprised as me. But if he didn't change Pryde's mind, who? Jean didn't. Just doing what comes naturally. Scott, did Jean do what I think she did? She used her abilities against an innocent person's mind, something that used to be an anathema to her. Aurora, when you were in that lab, when she fought the White Queen, what was it? What was she like? Not human. When she uses her power as Phoenix, there's a ferocity about her, a grandeur. She has changed so much, yet she hasn't changed at all. And right there, just with that comment, guys, that is a lot to unpack. My goodness. Seeing how far Jean has come from her scruples and her morals, what Xavier has taught her, and what she has learned with Bobby and Beast, Archangel, and Cyclops, of course, to now where she's just lashing out with this new power that she has gained. So X-Men 131, Dark Phoenix Classic, or Dark Phoenix, haven't had enough coffee. Classic X-Men 37, whichever way you guys can get it, definitely worth it. Now, with that said, each issue, as I explained, has a backup issue. And there's one particularly important that we will eventually go over once I decide to get my lazy ass pulling it out of my long boxes. But for the time, this was the one that Rick Leonardi and Fabian Nicieza did, was called Was Not What Will Be. And I like Rick Leonardi, don't get me wrong. But after going from this to this, the book just feels so disjointed. Now, I know this was done, from 1980 to 89, 90, so about 10 years difference. I can understand, but I wish that they would have picked an artist. So 1990, I wish they would have picked an artist that would kind of jived with the style, which at this point I would have particularly said Jim Lee, since Jim Lee has gone on record saying that John Byrne and Frank Miller were his two inspirations for getting into comics. So just, if you're looking here, it's fun, but it just does not jive between the two books. It just feels like two different ideas, which is what it is. And you have to, once you've read Claremont's and what's established the X-Men and everything that we've known for decades now, you have to kind of separate it. And that's what I try to do when I read this. It essentially just says, Tuesday it was Zappa's out of Staten Island. For some outdated Aerosmith and Zepp. Wednesday it was some progressive Elvis the Sea and Graham Parker for the folks at the island at OBI East. And essentially just saying all these shows that Dazzler's doing, trying to make it. This is her life. Her name is Allison Blair. She's a singer. She's a mutant. She owes 3 months' rent. All of this is forgotten as she closes her act with a spirited rendition of Ring My Bell. Her voice is so beautiful, it's almost painful to hear. It was wasted on such drivel. In the writing, very much, and I've said this before, where Nicieza and Scott Liddell really went out of their way to try to capture that John Byrne, Chris Claremont era X-Men energy. And of course, Liefeld did too, working alongside Louise Simonson. So I appreciate what Nicieza is doing here, trying to build up what Allison Blair is here. But as much as I like Fabian Nicieza, this book bores the crap out of me because it just shows how she's always going. And she's catching all these different cars, which Allison having the disco roller skates I've always thought was ridiculous. But she's kind of pulling a Marty McFly where she's catching a ride to this diner where she meets up with her buddies and they just kind of go over life facts from human mutant relations to politics. I mean, everything. And it's like one of those all night things. And it's supposed to be like a human interest story, but it goes and it goes and it goes. And each time, the only thing that kind of made it interesting is every time that they kind of, whatever they circle back to, they always grill Allison on what she's going to do with her powers and what she's going to do about it. And she goes, great suggestions, one and all, really. All night we've talked about personal choices, right? Well then, I choose never to be a superhero. Believe it. And that's what it builds up to. And it just, again, just feels so disjointed to what it is. It's supposed to give some more background into Dazzler. And I can appreciate what Nicieza is trying to do, but it does not excite me. But, of course, the X-Men 131, classic X-Men 37, classic masterclass on how you comic book. And that's why Fabian Nicieza and Scott Liddell there for the longest time carried the X-Men through the 90s together. So, folks, if you've enjoyed what you've seen, please first and foremost support your local comic shop and grab this issue or the OG X-Men 131. And if you've enjoyed this review, really would appreciate taking a moment to like, share, and subscribe. Helps the channel more than you could possibly know. And if you don't mind hitting that fancy little Phoenix bell next to subscribe, that was I can tip upload content. You guys get notified. Come to the channel, and I love talking with y'all, hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments or the socials, which I'll make sure the links down in the description. So with all that said, hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, everyone.